Hello, you're watching Tell It Like It Is, and my name is Kathy Benuck, and the big one's coming up. The name of today's show is The Governor's Horse Race, and my guest is Ovide Lamontagne, who is the Republican nominee for governor this year. Now, beyond a doubt, one of the most important votes that we will cast in a matter of days is that for the next governor in New Hampshire in our state. Is our state on the brink of disaster? I believe that it is, even though we've seen some progress in recent months in getting the budget under control and in preserving the New Hampshire advantage, but the work has only begun. Ovide is an extremely well-known businessman and governmental experience person, and his passion to improve the economy and get New Hampshire people back to work is very, very well known. There's way too much to talk about today for me to spend any time going back over the details of his background and experience. So what I'll ask you to do is sit down, review the two shows previously done with him, Race to the State House, dated May 4th of this year, and Final Sprint for the gubernatorial nomination, dated August 13th of this year. Simply go to the BCTV website, www.bedfordtv.com, click on the Channel 16 schedule, search box on upper left, type in Tell It Like It Is, and you will find those shows. Do it, because we can't get it all done today again. Ovide,
Kathy, great to be with you.
Thank you. You have been an amazing campaigner. You're going 1,000 miles an hour, and we're glad to have you here today.
Well, it's great to be with you, and I thank you for the public service you're rendering to the people in Bedford and beyond who are having a chance to meet the candidates up close and personal. And you do a great job just making sure we talk about the issues and focus on what we do for New Hampshire, and then let them make the decision.
Well, it's the candidates who are doing the great job getting their ideas across.
Well, thank you, Kathy, for that.
All right. Throughout the campaign, you have focused on New Hampshire's economy, maintaining the New Hampshire advantage, and increasing new jobs. You've also put forth a very comprehensive package of ideas to reduce the state budget, make government more efficient and effective, lower health care costs, increase access to health care, improve education, and rein in out-of-control energy costs. Now, you've encompassed all of this in the planks of your platform in what you call the prosperity agenda, and you've set forth your leadership priorities. Although I know it's impossible for you to get into every element in detail, walk us through it.
Well, great. Well, first of all, it is on our website at ovide2012.com, and it's called the Prosperity Agenda because that's what we need to be about. Everywhere I've gone, Kathy, this last year plus in this campaign for governor, people have said to me consistently they're concerned about jobs, their own jobs, the jobs of their loved ones, the jobs for their children. So the campaign and the next governor needs to be really focused like a laser beam on what we can do in New Hampshire to be a magnet for job creation, to really kickstart our economy. Kathy, when you think about it, we are 30,000 jobs short of where we were at the time of the Great Recession in 2008. Wow. In other words, we really haven't come back to full employment in New Hampshire. And our unemployment numbers are not telling the true picture. In the North Country, unemployment's in double digits in many parts of the North Country. And even here in southern New Hampshire, there is a lot of underemployment. So we need a robust economic recovery, and our prosperity agenda starts to put us on the track to do that. Because I recognize that good jobs are started by the private sector with people who are making investments in businesses and services or manufacturing, and that's what we need to focus on and make sure government has a platform that allows those businesses to survive and succeed. So our prosperity agenda includes reducing the business profits tax, reforming it to create incentives for job creators so that if they create a new job, they don't have to pay an additional tax. Right now, the way our tax system works, if you have new employees and you're paying a BET tax, you're going to pay more, but based on the number of employees you have. We're creating a tax credit for job creation, extending the research and development tax permanently, tax credit, I should say, permanently, and then creating other incentives that simplifies the tax filing, and then also eliminating other factors and focusing on the sales factor for our business taxes so that if a company chooses to move to New Hampshire, they don't have an enhanced penalty or tax because they own property here and so forth. And so the business tax would be looking at the sales factor. So it's a very, very good and comprehensive approach we're taking. Then we're looking at issues like regulatory reform. A lot of businesses complain about the fact that the federal government and the state government makes their life harder.
Yes.
Their competitive advantage is lessened because of all the compliance costs they have to incur to comply with the latest rules and regulations of government. And I don't want government to be in the way of business. I want government to be there so that we have better jobs, more jobs, and an economic stability. And so regulatory reform is part of that. And as you mentioned quite well about our prosperity agenda also looks at education opportunities, aligning businesses with educators so that we can make sure we have the programs for study that lead to jobs in the private sector here in New Hampshire, so our students can choose to stay here because the jobs are here. And we can get there if we have a comprehensive approach. My approach is called Learn to Earn. Healthcare is also a major issue in New Hampshire.
Huge.
Healthcare reform has to happen, but it has to happen locally, beginning in the communities and then moving to the state, not the federal government. And so my approach is to work in partnership with the federal government to the extent Washington is involved in healthcare through Medicare and Medicaid, and then make sure we have more flexibility in how we allocate and spend those Medicaid dollars, particularly to provide services to senior citizens, and particularly senior citizens who have disabilities or are poor, individuals with disabilities themselves, and women and children who are poor. That's the market, or the beneficiaries who are intended to benefit from Medicaid. And then bring our other lives, you know, individuals who don't have health insurance, bring them into the private insurance marketplace with a high-risk pool and other initiatives that we can take here in New Hampshire to expand coverage for more lives and more individuals.
It's a huge agenda.
It is.
Now, we've repeatedly heard you described by some other folks as someone who's advocating for changes that will hurt our senior citizens, compromise our health care, and diminish the quality of our children's education. I'd like you to go back over some of those myths and correct them, and tell us how people can better understand what these myths are.
Well, there's a lot of myths, half-truths, and outright falsehoods out there. You know, first of all, the suggestion that I somehow can alter the Medicare system is just wrong. It's fundamentally wrong. The governor of the state of New Hampshire can't do anything about Medicare. Medicare is an entirely federal program. It's the insurance plan for our senior citizens. I have a mom and dad who are Medicare beneficiaries. 82-year-old dad and my mom, I won't mention her age, a little younger than my father.
Unless you want to be in trouble.
That's right, I'd be in trouble. But you know, like every other citizen in New Hampshire and across this country, we expect that our senior citizens will be entitled to and will receive the benefits promised for them that they paid into for Medicare. And that system is not going to be changed or affected if I'm the governor of New Hampshire. And then other myths like that I'm opposed to public kindergarten. I'm a former teacher. I care deeply about education. Former chairman of the State Board of Education. We have public kindergarten. We will have public kindergarten. And then other charges about, I don't know, everything from teaching creationism. That's not something part of my agenda at all. And in fact, I think we need more local control over education, which is why I joined with Governor Lynch last year to work on an education funding amendment. It was actually Jean Van Loan right here in Bedford. Was an important part of the team that designed some language that would restore local control over education policy and education funding to our cities and towns and school districts. And I was proud to work with Governor Lynch on that. My opponent, Maggie Hassan, opposed the decentralization or allowing school districts have full and complete responsibility for the education curriculum as well as the funding for that education. And I think there's a fundamental difference on a number of issues between myself and my opponent. But I'm talking about my plan. My opponent, like other candidates on the Democratic side, are trying to undermine, criticize, and malign, frankly, their opponents because they don't have a plan to talk about. They want to spend more and tax more. And Maggie Hassan already supported expanding or increasing the gas tax at exactly the time when we're paying.
I heard that this week.
Yeah, we're paying the highest tax rates or gas taxes. I should say gasoline prices that we've paid in a long time, and we're really setting new records now. That's not what we should be doing. I want to balance our state budget without raising taxes and fees. We can do it if we have the right priorities. We can also achieve efficiencies. That's what I would look to, because the last thing we want to do is go back to the taxpayers, the businesses of the state as well, and ask them to offer up more money to state government, which can be much more efficient. And it's going to be if we put the focus on spending, controlling it, and making sure our taxes and fees are not increased on our citizens.
Well, you know, there's obviously a huge divergence of opinion between you and your opponent. What are the ones that you believe, and just talking to people and meeting people throughout the state, what are the ones that it's most important for people to be aware of?
Well, I think it's really important to be aware of my tax view and her tax view, because that informs how readily someone is willing to go into the taxpayers' pockets to get more money out of the pockets of the taxpayers.
Okay.
Now, in this case, Maggie Hassan, when she was in leadership, has a record. And she has a record of increasing spending by 24%, way above the cost of living index. And she claims that some of that was because we had federal stimulus money come to New Hampshire. If that's true, then why was she raising 99 taxes and fees during that same time?
99.
99.
Wow.
And we're doing our work now, really explaining to the people in New Hampshire where those taxes and fees came from. And it's across the board, everything from increasing taxes on nursing home beds, which she supported.
On nursing home beds?
On nursing home beds,
Really?
exactly, and hospital beds. And taking that money not to provide more health care, but to provide more money to the general fund. And it goes across the board, including trying to steal medical malpractice money from the physicians of our state, who years ago had formed the Joint Underwriting Association, the JUA, which built up reserves based on premium payments made by physicians. And she tried to steal that in the 2009 budget.
I remember that, and they were in an uproar.
That was a huge issue.
Yeah.
And it was also government overreaching and acting unconstitutionally. That's what the Supreme Court ruled. Maggie Hassan won't stop at trying to find ways to get private dollars into government. And she doesn't have a record of fiscal discipline. And that's what will lead to not only bigger government, but out of control bureaucracy in New Hampshire if we don't have the right discipline, the right approach. And it's a fundamental issue there. She started off her political career supporting an income tax. And she does not support the income tax ban amendment that's going to be on the ballot this time, which should raise people's question, which should really raise some real issues about whether or not she's seriously committed to having no broad-based tax in New Hampshire. And your viewers are sophisticated. They will remember that when Jeanne Shaheen ran for governor, she took the pledge the first 2 times she ran. The third time she renounced the pledge and supported a sales tax. Unlike Jeanne Shaheen,
I remember that,
who never really ran on a broad-based tax before that third time for governor, Maggie Hassan has. And she's also supported the LLC tax, which is tantamount to an income tax on small business. And that had to be repealed ultimately because the people really rebelled against it. That tax was put in place in the middle of the night on the last day of the 2009 budget cycle.
Yeah, that was incredible.
No public hearings. It was
None at all?
No, all under the cover of darkness, cloak and dagger approach to creating a budget. That's not what New Hampshire deserves, but that's the leadership she gave us. And that budget that you've heard some television commercials about, where she said she balanced the budget, that was out of whack by $300 million, to the point the governor had to take the unprecedented step of calling the legislature back into session in June, later after the session was over, later in that biennial session in June of 2010, to basically fix a $300 million hole. And they did it by borrowing against operating expenses. They did it by doing some other things that they did, which I think were a disservice to us, to the point now where our legislature this past session had to balance the budget, recognizing there was a $800 million structural deficit that Maggie Hassan had left for the legislature. And the viewers probably do know this, but it's good to be reminded that after 3 terms in the state Senate, her own constituents voted her out of office because of her failed leadership and failed policy. They saw what was going on. They didn't like it. And we shouldn't like it either, because in the position of the governor of the state of New Hampshire, you can do a lot more damage to the New Hampshire advantage. And I'm going to be somebody who's going to promote the New Hampshire advantage, be fiscally responsible, focused on what makes a difference for us in New Hampshire, to attract businesses, to really be that site for entrepreneurs to come and invest in our state. And it's through their efforts that we'll create new and better jobs for our citizens. But it has to be in partnership with our businesses, not trying to take them over. And that's what, unfortunately, the approach that Maggie Hassan has taken.
And I'll be honest with you, I'm always concerned when I hear somebody running for office, instead of saying a flat yes or a flat no, say that they're open to conversation.
Yes. And when you
scares me.
When you're asked the tax question and that's your response, that means you're going to be taxing. And that's been her response. She's also defended Reggie and other programs which
just
increase
was going to bring that up to you, yeah. And explain that a little bit, because
Sure.
I know a lot of people hear Reggie or see the
Right.
the acronym, and they're like, what is that?
What it is a cap and tax program in New Hampshire. The legislature under Maggie Hassan's leadership and basically adopted this extra cost that's imposed on the ratepayers of public service of New Hampshire, which is essentially generating dollars that are sent to an agency of state government who will decide to pick and choose the winners and redistributing that money. It's a tax that is assessed against the people of New Hampshire who are ratepayers, and they take those dollars and they redistribute those dollars to support so-called green energy initiatives. The private marketplace should be where we support the green energy initiatives, not government manipulation, higher electricity costs. We're among the highest in the country. If we're going to be serious about recruiting new businesses, we have to get control over electricity costs. That means fully creating a competitive marketplace, but it also means taking the governmental drivers of cost out of the equation. And we should repeal Reggie. It is not doing what I think the plan is designed to do, and it's the wrong way to do it. Cap and tax, government manipulation of the marketplace never has worked. And she tried to do this as well with health care. This is the stark difference there too. I'm looking for private strategies that will bring more insurers into our state to compete, more opportunities to design healthcare plans to work with our businesses as well as our citizens. Maggie Hassan wanted to create an agency to manipulate the price of healthcare services.
A new agency?
A brand new agency. A brand new agency. This is called Maggie Care, Senate Bill 505, 2010, if you want to look it up. And that agency would have been basically controlling the healthcare market, an Obamacare system in a way called Maggie Care. She's fundamentally wrong in what needs to be happening for healthcare in New Hampshire. We need more free market opportunities, more choices, and more empowerment for our citizens, not more government control. So the choice is very stark in terms of the direction either one would go in. That bill, by the way, she says passed. It passed because her colleagues gutted the bill, made it a study commission. And Kathy, if you look at...
Big difference.
Well, it is a big difference. Thankfully, it's a study commission, but then she was on that commission, and they reported in August of 2012 their findings.
Yeah.
You know what their findings were?
No.
We need more time to study. Now, does that surprise you or what? But that's what happened. And that's not leadership. If she has a plan, she should lay it out, make it very clear. Her plan is turn over our health care to government, whether it's through Obamacare or through a New Hampshire governmental entity. More government does not lead to better health care. It won't lower costs. What it'll do is ration and lower quality. I put my money and my faith behind our healthcare providers, our primary care physicians, our specialists, the hospitals, the insurance leaders, as well as businesses and citizens, to put together a New Hampshire strategy for improving healthcare, and we'll do it. And I've been served as outside general counsel at the Catholic Medical Center for 14 years. I worked with Franklin Regional Hospital and merging that hospital with Lakes Region General Hospital to form a new delivery system. And we need to move into a New Hampshire-based approach. I know that's the system here in New Hampshire. I want to work with our leaders to get that done for our citizens, for our businesses, and for future generations, so they can have the health care they're entitled to.
It's amazing, because if you talk to somebody who lives in Canada or who lives in England, where, really healthcare is regulated nationally, I mean, all you hear is horror stories.
There are a lot of horror stories, and what happens there, it's rationing. It's rationing by delaying the time between you are diagnosed with a problem and a disease or a serious illness and the time you get care. And the market in New Hampshire and the United States has been allowed to function in the sense that we have people who want to buy goods and services in healthcare, which is why we have an array of modern technologies and new innovations that are happening and being developed right here in the United States, not in other countries, because the free market's allowed to function. But if you allow Obamacare to be implemented, and implemented the way the Congress and President Obama has designed, you are going to get these panels are going to ration care. You're going to get less Medicare coverage because they're lowering the cost of Medicare $716 billion worth. And that's not in the interest of our senior citizens.
No, it's not.
And so I think we really need to take a strong and long look at Obamacare and find a New Hampshire way of working with the federal government to cover more lives and have a New Hampshire solution for health care. And the choice on this is stark. Maggie Hassan would want Washington to tell our citizens, our senior citizens particularly, where and when they're going to get their health care. And the IRS is going to be in between us and our physicians collecting
scary
taxes.
all by itself.
Because that's what Obamacare is about.
I know it is.
And we need a different approach. And we're going to have a different approach if I'm the governor of the state of New Hampshire.
And, you know, while you're on Obamacare, I mean, it seems like every day we hear some new facet of that monster of a bill that none of us ever heard of before.
There's so much that people haven't heard about, and
Yeah.
that's what makes this very challenging and I think very threatening. People don't know that we're lowering reimbursement for home health care. We should be encouraging people to stay in their homes as
Absolutely.
long as they can with the provision, with the support of a local provider. That should be the direction we take, not a direction that forces people out of their homes into assisted living facilities or skilled nursing homes before they're ready. And again, I care deeply about health care. This is something that I'm the son of dentists, and I've again worked in healthcare. It's a critically important area for our state, and it's important for our economy as well, for our job creators to be able to work within a healthcare environment that doesn't kill jobs, but rather allows them to grow and let citizens have access to health care.
And that is one of the things that I have heard so much, you know, from those folks who would not want you elected. They do try to portray you as somebody who has a very cavalier attitude toward health care and
Right.
Medicare and so on.
And education, and that's unfortunate. That's all they have to say because they don't have a plan. They don't have an approach other than turning everything over to government, essentially. And that's the road Maggie Hassan would take us down. My road is to work with the people in New Hampshire at the local level and at state government and take control of our own destiny. That's the New Hampshire I grew up in. I'm a fourth-generation Hampshire native. I have an anti-broad-based tax gene in my body. I don't need to take a survey as to whether or not I support a sales or income tax. I don't. My opponent ran on one, an income tax. And now she's trying to get people to convince them, or trying to convince them that she's opposed to a broad-based tax, as if that's somehow disconnected from containing spending, which she didn't do. There's a fundamental difference in approach, and I think the people of New Hampshire are looking for leadership for a change. One of the things I've pledged to the people of New Hampshire, by the way, on my website you'll find Ovid's Oath, a 10-point pledge for New Hampshire voters. One of them is that I'm going to sign or veto any bill that comes to my desk. The New Hampshire Constitution allows the governor of New Hampshire to sit back and let bills become law without his signature or her signature, and I think that's not leadership.
I agree with you. I see that as spineless, quite honestly.
Well, it's really basically a cop-out.
Yeah.
I'm committing to the people of New Hampshire that I will act. I'll either sign or veto any bill, which means I'll be involved in the legislative process. And I'll let our legislative leadership know early on whether or not I can support a particular initiative or not, or the details of it. And I'll be hands-on throughout the process. I'll also help to bring some new, I hope, decorum and not only civility, but creativity to the legislative process, which is constructive. And we need to make sure that we work together. The other thing I tell people in New Hampshire is this: the governor of New Hampshire is not a partisan position. If I become governor, I'm taking my conservative values with me, but I'm not going to use my party label as either a barrier to access or a speed pass to entry into the governor's office. Let's all work together. Democrats, independents, libertarians, Republicans. If we have solutions or problems, as long as we have shared goals, we should be able to work together regardless of our party affiliation. And I'll be a governor for all of the people of New Hampshire. And I'll be a governor that'll be hands-on and accessible. People will have my cell phone because in the end, the governor of New Hampshire is like a small-town mayor. Somebody who needs to be available in times of natural disasters, times of state celebrations, and times of ribbon cuttings and bringing new businesses here and supporting existing ones. And to that point, I credit Governor Lynch with being accessible, available to us. I disagree with him on policy. People said, oh, you're going to be radical. I'm going to be radical in the sense that I'm actually going to lead. And I'm going to lead by acting on bills that come to me. That's a radical departure from where Governor Lynch has been. But in terms of being available and accessible, I'll be a lot like Governor Lynch.
I do want to point out to people, too, that on your website, you have, in fact, I was kind of looking it over last night, you've provided a very good listing of a lot of the new taxes that have come about. And
because of the prior leadership of
right,
Maggie Hassan,
and when I saw some of them, I mean, I'll be honest with you, some of them I forgot how angry I was when they passed.
Camping
and I think
taxes.
people need to be reminded. Yeah,
right. Things like camping taxes and like I said, again, that LLC tax really caused a revolt in our state.
I remember that. Yeah,
because it hits right in the heart of small business. By the way, I've been endorsed by the National Federation of Independent Businesses, the New Hampshire chapter.
That's an important endorsement.
Very important. If you think jobs and the economy is the priority of the government going forward, and certainly of the governor to oversee, the people of New Hampshire should know I have the backing of business. And small business is the backbone of New Hampshire. And 1,700 small business leaders and owners in New Hampshire's NFIB chapter have endorsed me. And I have support across the aisle in terms of other business and business leaders, which will be rolling out here in the final stages of this general election. I am the candidate that stands for jobs, stands with business, and will be the governor who can bring us into a new era of prosperity.
Well, you know, as I'm looking at the clock, there literally is only enough time for you to do your, you know, let's go on the assumption that some of the folks who are watching the show, this may be the last chance that they'll see and hear you in person. So now's the time. Sum it up and let them know why they need to vote for Ovide.
Well, what I'd like to tell the citizens here in Bedford and across New Hampshire is this is time for leadership for a change. And I'm a fourth-generation Hampshire native who's got experience in business as a business owner, a business leader, someone who's worked on some of the toughest business challenges of our state in recent memory over the last few years. I have experience in government as chairman of the State Board of Education, legal counsel to the State Senate, and I've been a leader in the civic and charitable sector, like Easter Seals, the Boy Scouts, other organizations that have helped to provide that safety net for our citizens. I will come as governor and be a leader with all of these sectors, but focusing on business and job creation. That needs to be the primary focus. I can be the governor who works not only for you, but with you to make New Hampshire the best state to do business, the best state to raise a family, and the best state to live free, which is our motto. And I ask you for your vote. I ask you for your support on November 6th. Please spread the word. Let people know that the person they're seeing on those television ads that are very negative isn't the person who's running for governor. That's somebody else they want to paint. I'm the person who stands with the people and the institutions and businesses of New Hampshire, and I ask you for your support. Thank you very much. God bless you, God bless America, and God bless the great state of New Hampshire.
Ovide, fantastic.
Thank you very much, Kathy.
We went right to the wire again. You have so much to say and so much people need to hear, and I wish the show could have gone a lot longer.
Thank you for your service again to the community.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for your service, for stepping forward, and I wish you nothing but the best of luck in the next few weeks.
Thank you, Kathy.
And we'll have you back.
Excellent. I will be back, and maybe I'll come back as a governor-elect. How about that?
Fantastic.
Okay.
Okay, I'll be right on that phone.
Good.
Okay. Well, here it is. We are down to the wire now, and if any of you have any questions or want to contact anybody in the campaign or Ovide himself, go to www.ovide2012.com. Look through that whole website. There's a ton of things to see, and you will learn much. And Ovide, again, for the third time here, has done a fantabulous job of telling it like it is. That's why we want him to keep coming back. So thank you for watching. Make sure you vote on November 6th. And until next time, bye-bye.